Ryan doesn't want to say anything in case I'm recording. He doesn't want it to end up at the front of the episode. Hello, and welcome to the D3 Datacast. I am Matt Snyder, and joining me on the other line, he does not believe in Christopher Newport. It's Zach Snyder. How you doing, Zach?
Well, I guess that's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but that is not fair. That's not a fair characterization of me, Matt.
Is
We'll
that
talk about
is
it.
that a spoiler? I don't know. This is a hot takes episode, so I was going to put words in your mouth. I was going to give you a hot take before you had an opportunity to give your own. But this episode's about bold predictions, strong opinions. We're going to give the spiciest takes in Division III basketball. We're going to have a good time doing it. But Zach, we're here. We made it. We're at the start of the Division III basketball season. We're going to have games that count this week. Tip off on Wednesday. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel great. I mean, we've been doing weekly episodes now, gotten that weekly cadence going for about a month. So it doesn't feel too different from that standpoint, but we started putting together, this episode, the week 1 episode, and we were like back in that familiar format, that we kind of developed over the course of last season. And so here we are, our week 1 show for fans and viewers who were with us last year. This will probably end up feeling very familiar, but I guess a couple blind squirrels found a nut. It seemed to work, and so we're going to roll with it again this season. Of course, Matt, we do have a few new things that we've talked about over the course of the off season, but if you kind of checked out during the off season and you're just coming back to the D3 hoop scene, coming back to the D3 Datacast, we want to mention again that we unveiled and launched the all new D3Datacast.com. And for viewers who are used to tracking with the efficiency ratings and all the NCAA regional ranking criteria that you have put together in the past, there is a big change, as now D3Datacast.com is the home for where you will find all of those for the 2023-24 season.
Yeah, d3datacast.com. Update your bookmarks. I previously had it on an old blog site, so d3datacast.com. And I'm also happy to announce, in addition to men's basketball efficiency ratings, men's and women's basketball, like strength of schedule, regionally ranked opponents data, I'm now this year going to be running women's basketball efficiency ratings too. So that'll be on the site. You can find daily score predictions based on my computer ratings, and you'll be able to find that for men's and women's basketball. So every day, if you want to check that out, what my computer system predicts as far as like a percent chance of each team winning, what a predicted final score might be, you can check that out on d3datacast.com. Happy to do it. We are the Datacast, Zach. We love data. We love numbers. We love computer systems. I think that's how I like to think about the game. So it's fun to be able to do that on d3datacast.com. So check that out as well.
We love all those things, but above all, we love Division III basketball, and that's what brings us here. This has been so much fun for us to do. We'll be here all season long. Hopefully, you will be with us all season long. Encourage you to click the subscribe button on YouTube to make sure you can add all of our new shows into your subscription feed. And Matt, we're also on all the top podcasting apps. So if you prefer an audio only on the go version, search D3 Datacast wherever you prefer, and you're likely to find us.
Yeah, Spotify's taken off. Hit the follow button on Spotify or the subscribe or follow button or however it works on Apple Podcasts as well. You can find us, keep us in your feed, and enjoy all that hot, spicy D3 content.
And speaking of the hot, spicy D3 content, Matt, let's go into a familiar first segment from a season ago. We had a preseason top 25 poll from the good folks at d3hoops.com. And of course, once again, you are a voter. Last year, we made a habit of looking at your ballots, and let's do that here. Let's see what you turned in. I know you made this public previously, but thought this would be a good way to kind of start off this show. So Matt, take us through your preseason top 25 ballot, if you would.
Yeah, I did submit this on twitter.com. So some people may have seen this, but I do like to post it on every week's episode, and we can just have a little discussion on it. No surprise, right at the top, I put Christopher Newport. They're the defending national champions. I think they're bringing back enough of that team that they're going to be formidable once again. So I expect Christopher Newport to be right in the mix. And among contenders, I picked them number 1. I came in a little higher than other people with Oswego State at number 2. I really like what the Lakers are bringing back. I think they were really strong last year. I think they're going to be great. Then rounding out my top 4, UW-Whitewater, a Final Four team from last year, and Keene State, who made a good tournament run last year, but I think second weekend team. They return a whole bunch back, and they look great as well. So those four teams in the top 4 I feel great about. Hampton, Sydney, NYU next. 2 teams I think are going to be poised to take steps forward from last year. So kind of those are some highlights there. Maybe picking around another Final Four team, Swarthmore at number 14. I think they have some pieces to replace, got a lot back. I still am high on them. And I think I skipped over Mount Union at number 9. So that's kind of where my Final Four teams from last year fall. A team that's close to me, I watch a lot, Calvin. I had number 12. They ended up number 10. So I had them kind of right in range there. I'm expecting a lot out of Calvin. They return 4 out of their 5 starters, like 9 out of their top 10 players. So I'm expecting good things from them. A lot of UAA teams in my top 25 here. NYU, Case Western Reserve, Wash U, Emory, all in the top 16. I think that's going to be just the cream of the crop, the top league this year. I expect a lot of things from the UAA. I expect those 4 teams at least to be in the top 25 for most of the year if things play out. And then kind of the end of the ballot, it's really hard to pick my final 5 teams. I had maybe 10 more that I could have picked, but my final 5 spots was North Park, the CCIW. They were the Pool A, I think, in the CCIW last year. I have Mary Hardin Baylor. I have Barry. I have Trine. I have Elmhurst, another CCIW team, as my final team there. Carthage, then 1 spot above. So I have 3 CCIWs kind of in the final 6 spots or so of my top 25.
Matt, I'm wondering if there's a point in your ballot here that you could identify as where things really got difficult for you. Like, maybe the first whatever you knew would be in your top 25 somewhere. I mean, it seemed like, in the lead up to the release of the preseason poll, we both participated in Bob Quillman's QCast top 25 roundtable, and it seems like everyone had a bucket of at least like 40 teams as they're trying to figure out like who's going to make it. Was there a cut line for you somewhere in there where you knew teams above that line were going to be in, and then it was maybe the last X number of spots where it could have gone either way in a number of cases?
Yeah, I think if you look at my ballot, I feel pretty good about my top 22. I kind of felt like those teams were all going to be in somewhere. And then the final few weeks, as we got more rosters, as we got the voter information that we get preseason, that d3hoops.com helps to solicit from the schools about, hey, what's returning on your roster, what's maybe leaving. Most of those teams, I think maybe all of those teams were kind of in my initial top 25 somewhere. They just maybe moved around. It was really those final 3 spots for me where I had 15 teams I could have put in, and I had to settle on 3. And that's not to say that there's maybe a huge gap between 24 and 20 or 21. Those final teams, I wasn't quite sure who to put in and who to leave out. But I feel like overall, there's definitely a tier line somewhere in there in the low 20s where there's not a huge difference between maybe number 20 and maybe number 35 in the country. It's just you have to draw the line somewhere, and we have to draw the line at 25.
All right, Matt, before we get into talking about, how the poll turned out overall, there's a couple kind of ballot outliers, I will call it, that you had. And, in the lead up to the release, we had a blog post going on d3datacast.com kind of tracking as individual voters made their ballots public ahead of the release. We were kind of tallying all those, and we were also fortunate enough to have a couple anonymous ballots find our way to us, people who wanted to get included in the tracker but didn't necessarily want to reveal themselves, which we understand, but we're grateful. So in the end, we ended up having 9 of the 25 ballots tracked. So of those 9, certainly not, we weren't expecting that. Well, okay, what we were going to be able to track was going to be exactly the top 25. But of those 9, there were a couple instances in which you were an outlier. So starting with East Texas Baptist, okay, they were on 8 of the 9 known ballots that we had. You were the lone exception. So I'm just wondering there, kind of what was your thought process as it relates to ETBU?
Yeah, so first of all, in my process, I tend to rank teams more than 25. And then I try to work on the order. Then I kind of sort by my order, and then I say, well, this team was next to this team. How do they compare? Whatever. ETBU is definitely one of those ordered teams that are past 25. I'll say they were in my next 3. They were somewhere 26, 27, 28. So I had iterations of this top 25 where they were in, and I had iterations where they were out. I think for me at the end of the day, I think they're returning a good amount of top tier talent. Overall, for me though, I kind of did some quick number crunches, and the data packet from d3hoops.com has some number crunches about returning production. I think they were more around 50 to 60% returning, kind of like points, minutes types of things. That's a little bit below average. And to me, where they ranked in maybe the computer systems last year, they were in that spot where you maybe could rank them this year, but to me, you didn't have to. So since I wasn't quite sure everything that they were going to return, I know they have some top-notch guys in the team. That's going to be a great team. They were definitely in consideration. For me, when I had to make that cut line, I just was maybe a little bit less confident in overall total what they had coming back than I was maybe about some other teams. So that's why ETBU was just off the list. I still number them. They're still definitely in play in the future and in my watch list. And almost were in. They were a team I wanted to get in, but they were just out.
And then going the other way, there were two cases where you were the lone voter of our 9 known ballots. Want to get your thoughts on those, starting with WPI, and then also Elmhurst was the other one. Now, I should note as we get into this, as the full poll came out, we can see from the points you were not the only voter in the 25, but of the 9 ballots that we knew about before the official poll release, you were the lone voter in that subset.
Yeah, I think I'm about half of WPI's points or something like that. I don't know how many other people voted for them. But WPI and Elmhurst for me are a little bit similar in the fact that they were both teams that the computer systems liked a fair bit last season. So Elmhurst finished 25 on Massey. They were 32 in my efficiency ratings. WPI was 31 in Massey. They were all the way up at number 9 in my efficiency ratings. Now, I think there are reasons why maybe my system was a little bit too high on them, but even if you discounted them down into that number 30 range, both these two teams, WPI and Elmhurst, both returned about 80% of their production by my calculations. So they're teams and that's above average. So they're teams that the computers liked a fair bit, even though they weren't really in the top 25 mix maybe by the end of the season by the voters. The computers liked them, and they're returning a fair bit. So both these teams, to me, are teams I want to take a second look at and think, am I going to vote for these teams? And for me, the answer was both yes. I know I'm pretty high at WPI at 18. That could change drastically based on early season results. But they were kind of a computer darling from last year returns a fair bit of production kind of votes for me. So I'll see where that goes. That could be terrible. That could end up good. But that's kind of where both of those two teams land for me.
All right, so you go through all the work of putting together what you believe to be the top 25. You submit that. It gets aggregated with 24 other voters, and then we get the official preseason top 25 poll. I'm wondering, as you saw how that poll came out, what your initial reactions were as you're seeing, the official list based on everyone's opinion. Were there any things that stuck out to you that you really want to highlight?
I think overall the poll made a lot of sense. I would say you said we had 9 kind of, let's call them public ballots. I think the trends, to me, I didn't do any math or I don't have really any evidence for this, but it seems like the public ballots are a little bit more forward facing, and the ones that weren't public were maybe a little bit more based on last year. I don't know if that's completely fair, but that's kind of how it seemed to me. And what I mean is, I was a little bit surprised to see UW Oshkosh end up ranked, to see Wheaton, Illinois, and St. Joseph, Connecticut get so many votes. We know these are top-notch programs. I would not be surprised if they can reload and find themselves in the mix. But for me as a voter, those are both teams that lose a ton on their rosters. We're talking about like only returning 20 or 30% of their production last year. And maybe they'll be great. And I can sort of see putting them at the end of your ballot as these great programs might reload. But to me, I just don't know what I'm voting on besides they were good last year, they're good year before. I'm sure they're going to find some talent. I don't really see a whole lot on the roster. Not saying there aren't good players returning, but there's just not enough returning for me to say these are for sure one of my top 25 teams. So that's why I did not vote for those 3 programs, even though we know they've been elite programs the last couple of years, made deep tournament runs. But I was surprised to see maybe those teams feature so highly. Oshkosh in the poll, Wheaton, St. Joseph just out, but receiving tons of votes.
Here, let me ask you this then. So you talked about having a ranked order beyond 25. How do you handle a team like Wheaton or St. Joseph, Connecticut that are are good programs, have established, St. Joseph is a newer program, but it has established itself as a good program. Do you put them anywhere in a ranked order at this point, or do you kind of just have them off to the side as like keep them in mind, but I don't even know what to do with them, so I can't even put them in a ranked order
Yeah.
behind outside the top 25. How do you handle a case like that?
Yeah, in a particular week, my ranked order might go to like 30 or 35, probably not further than that. But those teams that we just talked about, the Oshkoshes, the St. Joseph, the Wheaton, they're definitely on my watch list just because of their program strength, their recent program strength, but they're not numbered. I'm not going to try to stack them up right now. I want to see some results early in the season. And then maybe I will consider them again in the second poll if they just have dynamite results and put them kind of back where their program deserves. Looking at other results around the country too. But they're just kind of sitting in the unnumbered watch list that I'll have, which is maybe 40 or 45 teams at this point. I don't know the exact number.
All right, one of the things I was looking at as the poll, as we were tracking what we could glean from the ballots, is whether or not Christopher Newport would be a unanimous number one. I had a lot of confidence they would be number one. If I were a voter, I would put them number one. But also, Matt, I'm not of the philosophy that just because they were the national champion last year, and even just because they return a lot of talent this year, that they are an automatic number one. In the 9 ballots we knew about, they were unanimous, and like I said, had I been a voter, I would have put them there. But in the end, we see the poll come out, and they get 24 out of 25. The lone non-Christopher Newport number one goes to Whitewater. Which I think is defensible, but it's a little bit projectionist, maybe, if that's even a word. Um, like I said, it's not my philosophy that I think Christopher Newport would be a shoe-in as the defending national champion to be number one, but I feel like they earn the position where you'd have to really look for a reason to not vote them number one, and for that reason, I'm not sure that you can really make a good reason to say they don't deserve it.
I was totally.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And what was your reaction to seeing them not be a unanimous number one?
I think your question makes sense, but I think also the Whitewater vote can make a lot of sense. I was completely fine with seeing that. To me, I was almost going to be more surprised if Christopher Newport was a unanimous number one, not because they're not deserving or the best team, but I didn't think that there was a big enough gap between Newport and, let's say, Oswego, Whitewater, Keene State, that they were going to be overwhelming. Christopher Newport won the championship last year. They have a lot of those key players back, but I think in totality, their returning production from a percentage standpoint is a little bit more average than overwhelming. So I could see you kind of saying, well, maybe they were number one last year in a Final Four that was very close. There wasn't a lot to separate between all of those teams. Mount Union could have easily won that game, or Swarthmore could have easily won their semifinal and gotten in and maybe won. All those games were close. So a team like Whitewater, who was right there with those teams and then returns a ton, I can see someone thinking, hey, they're going to be the number one team this year, and I get that. I think almost any and all of those teams are deserving. I went with Christopher Newport, so I didn't consider it for too long, but yeah, I would have been a little bit more surprised. To me, the Christopher Newport returning very good, maybe not a 25 unanimous top 25 good, just compared to the other teams.
Yeah, interesting. Like I said, it was something that I was just wanting to keep an eye on and watch for, but I'm not sure that I really had an expectation whether they would or wouldn't be a unanimous number one. It was just interesting to see it kind of tracking that way and then just miss it by a single vote. Now, we've also talked about a lot of difficulty in separating certain teams. And we went through the exercise for a previous episode in our conference champions draft, trying to suss out who we thought were the preseason favorites. And I think both of us, looked at the Centennial as a real coin flip between Swarthmore and Johns Hopkins. And so it was really interesting to me to see them ranked right next to each other in this top 25 preseason poll. Seems like voters didn't even really know how to separate them. I don't know if, some people probably thought, hey, once I write one down, I got to write down the other, or if that's, maybe just an aggregate funny how it worked out.
Well, it's maybe a cop-out for me. You can see 3 specific places on my ballot. 8-9, John Carroll and Mount Union, back-to-back. Johns Hopkins, Swarthmore, 13-14, back-to-back. 2021, Carthage, North Park, back-to-back. For me, I want all these teams in my ballot. I don't know how to pick them in their own conference race, and it kind of feels like what's going to separate these two teams. I don't really feel like there's a huge gap where I'm going to slide another team or in or out. I don't know if that, like I said, if that's a little bit of a cop out, but I feel like putting them back to back means I kind of maybe think John Carroll can overtake Mount Union this year, but I'm not so confident that I'm going to separate them in the poll. So they kind of to me slide in together. And until we see more data, I'm okay doing that.
All right, excellent work, Matt. We look forward to tracking your top 25 ballot in future polls. But let's turn up the dial here a little bit on some other opinions. And we solicited the Division III basketball community looking for strong opinions, bold predictions, and hot takes for the upcoming season. And we had a few people, Matt, who were brave enough to put it out there for us to read and react to on the show here. So let's start off with this one from Jordan George, Matt. My hot take is potentially unrealistic, but the MIAA will be a 3-bid league this year. I could see a scenario where Calvin is dominant all year and hope/try and have a great regular season, with one of them winning the conference tournament. Matthew, what do you think about that?
Would love to see most of that. The Calvin dominating part is great. Maybe Calvin just win the Pool A, just go all the way and just do that. That'd be fine. I think they have 3 teams that are tournament quality in the league. I think that's a great call. I think the issue is going to be, can these teams win enough non-conference games? There's no margin for error in the MIAA. And then can the bottom of the league also win enough conference games that the SOS number gets high enough? Kind of projecting out like 525 for all 3 of these teams. That's probably not high enough to get 3 teams in. Maybe one of those teams could get in. Maybe one gets the Pool A. It's hard to get 2 because you're probably talking about the final few selections. But it could happen if the bottom of the league can win a few more games. Maybe that strength of schedule floats higher into like a 535 range, close to 540. Then you're talking about some Pool Cs there.
Yeah, I like where Jordan's coming from here, and I think he's got the right scenario kind of formulated to help make that a reality. But like you said, the problem is how to get 2 additional teams there at the end of the season that have a resume that looks selectable.
Yeah.
And this is we've kind of talked about this, but one of my biggest problems with the implementation of the selection criteria and the Pool Cs is not so much that I think the wrong teams are getting picked. It's just that I don't think that the criteria does a good job of collecting all of the worthy candidates from in just an absolute, basketball standpoint. So, like, case in point, never mind, Calvin, who was higher ranked and didn't get selected, last year. They had a bit of an SOS problem, but even more of an SOS problem last year was Trine. But then, you like one of the early, it may have even been the first round games to tip off was Tufts playing Widener last year. So I've got that game on, and Tufts was not a controversial selection, a really good team. I don't think that it was wrong that they were selected, but I'm watching that game and I'm like, by an eye test, I don't feel like Tufts is a vastly superior, like, oh yes, this is a tournament team, Trine is not a tournament team, right?
Yeah.
Now, by the NCAA criteria, like, it was an easy in and easy out, and that's where I think there's a disconnect between evaluating the absolute quality of a team, right, and this kind of resume that is collected under the current criteria. Yeah. So, and from an absolute sense, I think there's a good chance that maybe 3 teams are worthy, but I have a hard time seeing, just kind of given the current landscape of like the bottom half of the MIAA, that in the end 3 will be able to emerge with tournament worthy resumes.
I will also say Region 7 is so deep that for this to happen, you kind of need all of those teams to get in the regional rankings week in and week out, those 4 weeks leading up to the selections. Region 7 is so deep, it's going to be hard to get 3 MIAA teams in there with the criteria. So we'll have to wait and see how that finds out. Also, unfortunately for Jordan, he and I are on the wrong side of many, many rivalries. So I'll just like to call that out. But thanks for the input, Jordan. We appreciate that.
Definitely a bold prediction, Matt, because I think the path for it to becoming true is very, very narrow.
Yes.
But
I like it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
I love it. Good job. Thanks, Jordan. All right. Next one comes from friend of the program, Mike Rainiak at Coach Reg on Twitter. He says, despite being the best league, arguably, no UAA team will make the Sweet 16 for the second straight year. Matt, we like this. This is a little higher on the spice level. Awesome from Coach Reg. Your reaction? No UAAs in the Sweet 16 again this year.
Love to see it. We talked about that league last year being the best league. They didn't make the second weekend. All the teams lost in the first or second round of the tournament last year. I don't think that was really a criticism or on the whole conference's quality last year, but it was a league that was good by having lots of teams that were of reasonable quality, maybe not teams that were like top 10 really dominant type teams. I think this year, though, things might have shifted, and they maybe have a couple of those top 10-ish type teams. We'll have to see, but I love the enthusiasm here from Coach Reg.
All right, next one, Matt. Here comes from Greek Tragedy. We got a trio, Matt. Elmhurst will have a better season than Carthage. Whitewater doesn't win the WIAC, and Trine wins the MIAA.
All right. I mean, Elmhurst is in my ballot. They're 25. Carthage is like, what, 20, something in like that. So I think Elmhurst could make a play. I think Illinois Wesleyan could make a play. I think that's going to be a crazy league. I think any order you want to come out with, I think that's valid. So could happen. Elmhurst could definitely finish higher than Carthage in my mind. I think that's possible. What do you think?
My reaction is similar. It's kind of like that could happen. As it relates to Elmhurst and Carthage, I think it's interesting the way that we see the top 25 poll come out, where Carthage and North Park were kind of the dominant selections there. Not a lot separating the two of them, but in terms of the greater CCIW picture, like they were right there. And then Elmhurst, I know you had Elmhurst in your ballot. They picked up some other poll points, but kind of been also ran in the ORVs. But you look at the CCIW preseason coaches poll, and there was a top 4 that was just like points within each other, right? But it didn't seem like that was reflected in the way that top 25 voters viewed the picture. Now, I don't want to suggest there's some sort of, top 25 voter hive mind at play that is kind of missing the boat here, but it's just interesting. Sometimes you see the differences in the way that like the top 25 voters view a situation, and then you see the coaches poll where you got 4 teams really tightly bunched. I thought was interesting. So I think that lends credence to the idea that Elmhurst maybe is part of a chase pack there that is just nipping at the heels of Carthage and or North Park, however you want to see it.
The other two, I mean, the WIAC's always a bloodbath. Definitely could happen that someone ends up a game or two ahead of Whitewater. I think that's in play. I think Whitewater certainly looks like the best team in my mind right now in that league, but I always expect tough battles in the WIAC. Trine winning the MIAA. I had Trine in my rankings significantly lower than Calvin. I would expect Calvin to win. But again, it comes down to a couple of head-to-head matchups maybe, and if Trine can come out on top of Calvin, which they absolutely could win those games, then yeah, they could win the MIAA. So,
yep, Calvin, of course, a young team last year brings a lot back, but so does Trine with the 5th year, and then some transfers. They've done well to should be able to build on last season.
They're going to be good.
All right, Matt, we have one more here from a former player. Tom Quarry sent in a 5-pack here. So we just went from, 3 to 5. All right, let's just read them off here in order, and then we can kind of pick and choose. Claremont Mud Scripts to the Final Four. Guilford will win the ODAC. Centennial Conference will go 4-0 in the Scholars Classic. Just to add a little bit more, Matt, that's the event that will be played at NYU. Hopkins, Swarthmore, traveling to NYU to do an opponent swap there with NYU and WashU, right? So the UAAs will take on the Centennials. All right, Rowan and Stockton will both be first-round hosts again. And the WIAC and UAA will both get 4 teams to the tournament. Thoughts, Matthew?
I'll go bottom up. UAA, I think, mark it in, certainly. They're getting 4 in. Just write it down. It's happening, and maybe even 5. Did they get 5 last year? I'm not sure if that's happening this year. I think 4 is like a minimum for the UAA. So I like that call. Wyack at 4. I don't know. I'm seeing more of a 2 this year. So that is a spicy take from Tom. I'm seeing more 2. Crystal ball. Rowan and Stockton, I think one of the two gets a host. I think that region 4 is pretty weak. The NJAC champ is going to get that host, whoever that is. I think they're going to be at the top of the region and host. So I like one of those two. I could see 2. Like I said, I think there's last year that region was basically like the NJAC standings plus like NYU. So like NYU's maybe 1 or 2 there, and then there's a couple other teams there. I could see it happening just because the NJAC teams end up at the top. So whoever's at the top of the NJAC, maybe. I don't know if that's Stockton. I don't know that they return a ton, but again, a program that's always good, so maybe it is. I'd love to see it. Centennial Conference, let's do it. Let's go 4-0 at NYU. Prove it to me. Let's do it. And Guilford in the OAC, that wouldn't be my pick. My pick is Hampton City. I had them highly ranked. I think Guilford was just off of my top 25, so good team. Interesting that there's not a ton of Randolph-Macon buzz for the Yellow Jackets going on right now, but I don't know. I think Guilford could be in the mix. That's going to be another strong league.
All right, here's my addition to kick the spice level up a little bit here. I am going to say that it is more likely the Centennial goes 0-4 in the Scholars Classic than 4-0. Okay. So that's my response to that.
I think that is also correct.
Rowan and Stockton, that's an interesting one though, Matt, because we've talked about computer darlings or teams that just kind of stick out as being I don't know that you can really be favored by a computer system, but whatever. But kind of the top of the NJAC seems to have a history of being NCAA criteria darlings. Maybe I guess I would put it. Both those teams typically play strong non-conference. I think both of them are featured a few times in our top 50 games in November. So like they're playing strong non-conference schedules. Of course, the NJAC is a good league, so they're getting good, competition in league that lends itself to a strong SOS, and both being top programs, that's also meaning they're winning. And you add in kind of the region factor being a little bit weaker. They can pick up some of those RROs against teams that maybe wouldn't even be, ranked in other leagues. So it always seems to me that, teams like Rowan and Stockton have a way of, once you start looking at the NCAA criteria, they have a way of looking, even a little bit better than if you were just kind of ranking them on more, either by eye test or by, computer ranking, something like that. I don't know. That's just my impression.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think I'd have to go back and dive in a little bit, but I think the bottom of the NJAC, or maybe the bottom 2/3, does a good job of getting games in the non-conference that they can win, which helps boost the resumes of the teams at the top of that conference. So, I mean, it's not top to bottom, but they do end up with good SOSs, maybe compared to just overall team quality that the computer systems might think. They're more like on par with like teams at the top of the MIAA, which we just talked about. Maybe they're more even with those teams, but their resumes end up higher because their whole league, I think, does a better job of getting wins in the non-conference.
Now, Matt, I noticed that D3Datacast.com had a hit from Portugal. Ooh. And of course, Tom Quarry playing professionally this season in Portugal. So there may be a connection there.
Good luck out there, Tom. We're rooting for you.
All right, Matt, that wraps up our bold predictions and hot takes from the Division III community. Now let's bring in a special guest as we move into presenting a few of our own.
I think I hear him calling in.
We're pleased to bring in a special guest to the D3 Datacast Big Box. We are joined by Ryan Scott of D3Hoops.com. Ryan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for finally having me. I feel like I was your first fan, and it's taken a while. There've been a lot of other people on here before I made it.
Well, that is, we're not a guest-heavy show, and I think we should have had you on a long time ago. So that is our bad.
It is long overdue.
You're one of our best viewers and commenters, so I think of you kind of as the D3 Datacast ombudsman here. So you're finally able to come on and right all of our wrongs that we have, perpetrated for whatever it is, like 53 episodes now. So glad to have you on finally. So thanks for being here.
Sounds good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so just for our listening audience's benefit, Ryan is not only just a worthy guest in his own right. This is a bit of a prize for him because Ryan was playing along with our weekly picks a year ago, and I don't have the final tally in front of me, but I believe he handily defeated the both of us. So, we don't have a luxurious prize pack for you, Ryan, but we are glad to have you on here. We thought it'd be fun to, we know that you're probably going to be playing along with the picks again this year. We thought we would get your picks live on tape this time instead of having you just post them in the comments here as we get started for week 1.
Sounds good. I'm
All
excited.
right, so
now remember, I did start slow last year, so no expectations for week 1.
Hey,
but I will get there by the end.
We need a head start, so if you want to do that again, that's fine. That's great.
Well, I think we were both fighting for 500 about all year. So, but before we get into the picks, just to finish off our hot takes and bold predictions, we wanted to bring Ryan in for this as we have a few of our own as well. So, do we have a volunteer to get started? Anyone who wants to be brave enough to lead us off here? Huh? No? Okay, I will. All right, ready? Okay, so I don't know how bold this will actually be, but the one that's kind of been cooking in my mind for a while here is that I don't think we're going to see any returnees to the Final Four. I think we're in for 4 new teams this year. Now, just anticipating that maybe that might not be taken as such a bold prediction, as last year's Final Four saw 4 new teams from the previous year. I want to defer to the preseason top 25 here. We have Christopher Newport at number 1, right? We have Whitewater at number 2. We have Mount Union at number 5. We have Swarthmore at number 11. So all 4 of our teams, Final Four teams from a year ago, entering very highly ranked. Compare that to a year ago when Randolph-Macon was the preseason number 1. But outside of them in the preseason poll, we had number 17, number 23, and then outside in the ORV category. So that's how I'm backing it up to make that qualify as a bold prediction. And I don't think that's anything, speaking ill of our 4 Final Four teams from a year ago, but I think it's just speaking to the overall depth that we're going to see this year. It's going to be a tough road to get back, and I think we will see 4 new teams in Fort Wayne in 2024.
Yeah, I wonder when the last time we saw a Final Four repeat team was. I don't know that offhand, but I know we had 4 new teams this year, right? So I don't know how often you get a repeat team in there.
I'm trying to think about that. It's probably been a little. There's a page on d3hoops.com that we can look at that really quickly, but I don't have it in front of me right now.
Maybe we'll follow that up.
In terms of recency, the COVID canceled tournament really kind of throws a wrench into that. But
it felt like it should have been Randolph-Macon like 3 years in a row, but they only got 1. So okay, I can buy that. All right, so my take. Again, I don't know how spicy this is, but I'm looking at the top of this year's poll, and I think of those teams that are kind of ranked right at the top there, I think UW-Whitewater is the one that's most likely in my mind to vastly underperform those expectations. So like maybe they end up not in the top 25 or not in the tournament, or they're like 3rd or 4th in the WIAC. I don't really see any of those other teams up that high being out of the national picture. And I don't expect Whitewater to end up that way either, but I think of those teams, I don't know if it's the WIAC of it all that just things can happen weird. It can be a bloodbath. They could get beat up in there as all teams could. But they just feel like a team that, although I have high expectations for them, maybe they don't end up living up to that. A new coach. So we'll have to see how that shapes things as well. So high expectations for UW-Whitewater, but I would not be surprised, completely, utterly shocked, if we find them out of the national mix by the end of the season.
I did look it up, by the way. The last repeat was Oshkosh. They lost the final to Nebraska Wesleyan and then won the championship the next year. Okay. So not too long ago.
Yeah.
But I kind of agree. I feel like it's a bit of a bold prediction in the sense that 2 of those Final Four teams brought back most of the team, right? Which would put them in the driver's seat for that sort of thing. And I was really shocked. I think it was you guys last year, right? Who did the data about how many teams down you would have to go to get to 50-50 in terms of the odds, and that was only like 4 teams, right? So if indeed one of those 4 is in the top 4, there's a reasonable chance that they'll be back there again. But I think in the same way, Christopher Newport is always walking a tightrope in that they don't, they could lose a conference tournament to Mary Washington very easily. And with the kind of difficult schedule they have, they won most of those games last year, but they're playing a lot of good teams. They tend to either be coming back from behind or winning by just a few points. Like, if they've got 7 losses and they don't get the automatic bid, there's a chance they might not make the tournament. Like it's crazy how tight that is when they don't have a full conference slate to throw in there.
And we're kind of like a crazy Farmingdale State jumper away from them being a first round exit last year too, which would have completely changed the tournament.
Yeah.
Ryan, what's your hot take?
Well, I had 2. One of them, I believe, was taken by the submitted post. Tom Corey beat me to it. I was going to say my bold prediction was Guilford wins the ODAC. I didn't realize how many of those guys came back until we got the roster information for top 25. They had like 5 or 6 seniors on the team last year, and so I just assumed it was a rebuild, but they only lost 2 guys, and I think only amounts to like 30 minutes a game between the 2 of them. So that's a really good squad. I know they missed the tournament last year, but I was excited about that. My other prediction, I think, is a bold prediction, but it's one of those, I called it the Schrodinger's cat prediction, that as soon as I say it out loud, it's an upset for the first week.
Okay.
But as soon as I say that there's going to be an upset, right? The team's going to hear about it. They're going to get their minds together, and it's not going to be an upset anymore.
Bulletin board.
Well, hey, I appreciate the kind of reach and pull that you think that this program has. But go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, they're online. They'll know. So my prediction was that Western New England is going to beat Keene State. They're playing on the 11th, and it's Keene State's first game, but it's Western New England's second. So there's always a little bit, when one team's played a game already and the other one hasn't, there's a little bit there. Western New England's really good.
Yeah.
They've got, an All-American, Harrison on that team. Keene's got a new coach. They may be feeling some things out. I just feel like it's a good opportunity for an early season upset. But I also know the Keene guys are very aware. And the second I bring up the chance that they might lose that, somebody is going to find out about it. And they're, I feel like now that I've said it, it's not going to happen. But I do think that's a really interesting game to watch and a good upset opportunity.
Love the Western New England pick there. Spoiler, we're going to have an upset watch at the end of this episode, and I didn't pick Western New England, but I'm now hearing you talk about it, that would have been a good one to pick as well. And I think they're going to be a sneaky team to watch at the end of the year. I would not be surprised if they're kind of like a top 25 team by the end of the season. I think that they're good too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that conference will also have Nichols in it, who I don't think will be quite as good as last year, but they're going to be pretty strong. And yeah, it's going to be a decent record for them and a good schedule.
Yeah.
So, Matt, it wasn't enough for Ryan to beat us in the picks last year. Now he's going to beat us in the upset watch as well.
That's fine. I appreciate all of the input. And yeah, that's a great one.
All right, good stuff. Should we get into the picks?
Yeah, let's go to the picks.
All right, let's do it. All right, so this first slate, Matt, you picked 2 of the games. I picked 2 of the games. And then we gave Ryan the honor of choosing what would be the D3 Datacast game of the week for week 1. And well, there was a pretty obvious selection, so I think he came up with what we would have made it anyway. But
it was still a great choice.
It was a great choice. Thanks to Ryan for bringing that to the table. Matt, let's go through it.
Yeah. So again, this is how this works. Like you said, we each pick 2 games, then a game of the week. We run this through my computer system, and it spits out like a expected game line, like you might see like a fake gambling line. So we always do our picks against that computer spread. So that's what they go. The first game here is Emerson plus 2 points at Colby. The second game will be East Texas Baptist plus 2.5 points at Pomona Pitzer out west. Then we have St. Norbert plus 5 at UW Eau Claire. Swarthmore minus 2.5 versus Wash U at that Scholars Classic at NYU. And then Ryan's D3 Datacast game of the week. We appreciate the submission here, Ryan. Christopher Newport, preseason number 1, minus 1.5 on the road at Hampton, Sydney. So let's go through the picks one by one. I think, Zach, you are up first.
Yeah, okay. Leading off with a game here of it's just some teams in a region that I don't have as great of an intuitive feel as I would like for some other regions, but I'll take Colby here.
All right, Zach's taking Colby. My pick up next, and let me click the button to remind myself, I'm also going with Colby. I'm giving the 2 points. Like you said, really don't know what exactly to make up of these 2 teams. This is an interesting game to watch for that purpose. I like the home team in this matchup. And Colby was a team that was sneaky good last year. I'm not sure what to expect from this year, but I'm going to go that route here. What about you, Ryan?
I'm taking the points and going Emerson all the way. One of the reasons being, I know Emerson loses the big guy, and that's going to be some change, but they have a lot of young guards. And Colby had two guards, both of whom, interesting, had another year of eligibility left. One of them is Noah Tyson, who's now sitting on the bench as an assistant coach at Johns Hopkins. And the other one, Will King, is going to be playing for Claremont Mudscripts this year. Those are the two best players on their team, two senior leaders, two guards. I just feel like early in the season, that's going to be a real tough recipe for them. And so I'll take the points on this one for sure.
All right, game number 2, Zach.
All right, big one in Region 10. This is one of those games we talk about, big games in November have a impact in what we see in regional rankings and selection and stuff later on. So this is a big one in Region 10. I'm going to take the points here with ETBU at Pomona-Pitzer.
Yeah, Zach, I like the pick, and I'm going the same direction. Like I said, I didn't rank ETBU, but I had them just outside my top 25. I have them a little bit higher rated than Pomona-Pitzer. It is a long way out to California. It's on the road. We saw some Texas teams maybe struggle with that early season game last year. I think it was Mary Hardin Baylor at Claremont Mudscripts. That was a little bit of a struggle for them. But I really like what ETBU has. I like some of their top tier talent. So give me the points, and I will take East Texas Baptist. Ryan, we're to you.
Yeah, I'm going the same way. So that's undramatic, but I'll take the points. I think these are pretty well evenly matched teams. Again, I think ETBU's got a little more coming back. Pomona's going to have to figure out how to play without Mora, who's been their best player, which I think they'll be able to do. But some of these early games, you really want to go with the team that's got the most stability. And if you're adding in some points too, I'll take that.
Sure.
Great pick.
All right, St. Norbert at Eau Claire. Zach, your pick.
Yeah, St. Norbert's one of my dark horse teams to watch. I don't, they're not a team a lot of people talk about. They had a great close to the season. Had a close second round game against Wheaton to get knocked out of the tournament last year. 5 points here is easy for me. I'll take St. Norbert straight up, but give me 5.
Straight up on the road against the WIAC is pretty bold here. But I will go with St. Norbert as well. I'm going to match you pick for pick here, Zach. They return, like you said, a lot. I think Eau Claire loses a bit. They were kind of sneaky good in the WIAC last year as maybe that third or fourth wheel there. A really good team. I think this year they're a little bit of an unknown to me, so I'm going to take St. Norbert, who I think is a known and maybe is a fringe top 25 caliber team.
I am also going to go with you guys. I wanted to pick Eau Claire. Their roster wasn't up for a long time, and found out a lot of the seniors definitely are gone and graduated and moved on. And so big changes there. And I was still maybe going to hedge that direction just to be a little different. I'm not as high on St. Norbert as everybody else, but then they just came within a missed buzzer beater of beating D1 Green Bay last weekend. And I was like, well, if you're giving me points, I guess I can go with that team. And since you guys picked it too, there's no risk for me to go that way. So I'm not going to lose.
Good strategy. Good strategy. Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of Eau Claire, to be honest with you. As I was doing some research a couple of weeks ago, it seemed like last year they had a big senior class, but they also had a big junior class. So while they're losing a bunch, they're also bringing back a bunch, and they're kind of my wild card team in the WIAC. I'm not sure exactly how they'll stack up, but should be a great game with St. Norbert.
And 5 points feels like a lot there, so that's good.
Yep.
All right, Swarthmore, Wash U, Zach.
Yeah, Matt, we talked about the Scholars Classic here. This is one of those games. Yeah, Wash U being a young team last year, they should be really good this year. Getting 2.5 on the neutral court game here. I'll take Wash U.
Zach taking Wash U minus 2.5. I am also going Wash U minus 2.5 for very similar reasons. I'm
plus
pretty
2.5.
Sorry, Wash U is plus 2.5. Yes, Wash U is getting the points. I'm also going that direction for similar reasons. It's a neutral court game. It's I like Wash U right now, maybe straight up against Swarthmore, but that'd be very close. So you're going to give me 2.5 points, then I'm going to go Wash U's direction. Ryan.
And I will boringly go the same way again. Like I said, I'm relying on consistency from the year before. Swarthmore's got to replace quite a bit of scoring. They kind of have Caprice, the big guy, and D'Angelo, the guard, back to stabilize things, but there's a lot of scoring that they're going to have to figure out. And early in the season, I just would like to err on the side of a team that's bringing most of the players back. So I will go with Wash U. And again, if you're giving me points, seems to make a lot of sense.
That's going to be a great one to watch, though. That's going to be a great game. All right, game of the week. Christopher Newport at Hampton Sydney. Zachary.
All right, I struggled with this one. This was tough because just with a 1.5 to work with, I felt like you're basically just picking a winner, right? I initially wanted to go Hampton Sydney, but that 1.5 point, I felt like doing so would be saying that I'm picking Hampton Sydney to win. But I tell you what, I'm going Hampton Sydney. I'm trying to be a little contrarian here. We think about the lasting images we have of Christopher Newport winning the national championship. They're the preseason #1, but here they go on the road to Hampton Sydney. Hampton Sydney is going to have a great year. Christopher Newport's really going to have that target on their back. And while we think about, the way that last season ended, which included Christopher Newport knocking Hampton Sydney out of the tournament in the second round, we must not also forget about what happened last December 13th when Hampton Sydney went to Newport News and defeated Christopher Newport 85-70. So give me the Tigers.
All right, Zach, I like the way you're thinking. Looking at last year's results, I also realized Hampton Sydney won an early game by about 15 points. Christopher Newport won by a similar margin later on. But you know who didn't play, I think, in that first game? I don't think Trey Barber played in that game. I expect Trey Barber to play in this game. And I looked at the matchups. I don't know. I think Hampton Sydney's going to be great. I think I voted them number 6 or something like that. And this is at Hampton Sydney. I wanted to pick them. I don't know that they have a great matchup for Trey Barber. And for that reason, I'm going to go Christopher Newport -1.5. And Trey Barber is the difference. Ryan, your pick.
Oh, so all of this information is hard to jumble around, right? Hampton City won pretty easily at the beginning of the year last year, and that's actually the reason that I'm going to go for Christopher Newport. This is a team that takes those sorts of games very seriously. Some teams are just sort of like take a loss, water off your back, move on to the next one. These Newport guys, at least this current iteration, tends to remember that sort of thing, and I don't think they're going to put up with this repeat. I do think it's a bad matchup for them. I think Hampton City matches up. I'll disagree with Matt on that. I do think Hampton City's a tough matchup for CNU, but I do believe they're going to pull it out, especially early in the year with the confidence they have coming back and all those guys. I'm taking Christopher Newport.
I love the disagreement. I'm happy to look wrong by the end of the season.
A lot of agreement, but we did manage to get a little bit of disagreement in there.
Yeah, and since there were 3 picks, we all 3 of us went to the same side, so that pretty much cinches the win for Pomona Pitzer, UW, Eau Claire, and Swarthmore because we all went away from them. So congrats to those 3 teams. You have won your big games this week.
Hey, we have points to work with.
That's true. We have points on all of those games. So yeah, that could be true. All right, well, we obviously don't have any scores on the leaderboards. We will keep you updated every week, Zach and me and Ryan in the comments. If Ryan gets close, maybe we'll add Ryan's name to the picks leaderboard as well, because I know everyone out there is going to want to see the repeat of Ryan actually beating the D3 Datacast again.
Especially if I'm losing, right? You'll definitely put it in the scoreboard if I'm behind, right?
I don't know. You don't have to wear your losses like we have to wear our losses. So if you fall behind, we'll keep you off.
We were happy to admit that you beat us last year, and we'll be happy to admit if we beat you. So don't worry.
And if you win again this year, maybe down in Fort Wayne, we'll have to get you like a championship belt to wear around for the weekend. And 2 years in a row. So yeah, we appreciate you joining us for the picks. We appreciate your insight. We can follow your stuff again at d3hoops.com this year. I'm assuming you're writing your column.
I got the first piece, should have been done this morning. I had a missed interview this morning, but first piece should be finished and up to Pat when that goes up. Obviously, beginning of the year, there's lots of stuff, so it might get pushed back a little bit. But also, I have some breaking news I was saving for you guys.
Oh, wow.
I've told only one person this, and so I figured we'd save it for this podcast. Your patrons first, and then the rest is that I'm going to see you guys in a couple of weeks because I am going to the Great Lakes Invitational. I will be there in person to watch those games.
Nice. Springfield, Ohio.
Something I was not prepared for, but speaking of Patreon, thanks to the D3 Hoops patrons and some of the funding that comes in from that, I'm going to be able to go to that. So
awesome. That's going to be a great event, and we're excited to see you there. And it's not. I know a lot of other people are going to be there. There's going to be great games, great teams. So to have you there as well will be fantastic.
Yeah, another chance to hang out. Yeah, it's always good to rub shoulders with some folks in Fort Wayne, and to have another opportunity is awesome. And 2 packed days of great games. We'll get to see more, like twice as much basketball as we get to see in Fort Wayne. So it should be good.
Yeah. I'm personally not prepared for seeing 8 teams in one day. I don't know how that's gonna happen, but it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, you got to pace yourself. It's a long couple of days.
Yeah, and if anyone has never seen me watch a Calvin game in person, like I turn into an emotional wreck after that too. So I'll probably just be, that's an early game, so I'll just be like shut down for the rest of the day. So we'll see.
And then you'll either be, chill the rest of the day, or you'll be ticked off the rest of the day. So
I'll be okay. I'll be able to handle it okay either way. It's just, I use up a lot of energy just sitting there watching.
I don't know if this is your thing, but I always bring a large supply of gummy candy because I find that the chewing motion helps with any sort of nerves that are going on, and the
I like that.
You get tense or stressed or whatever. Like it's a calming sort of effect on the body. So that's my go-to for these big events.
I do love a gummy bear, a gummy candy.
yeah, we'll have to stop at Costco or something, Matt, and get you the supersize tub of gummy bears. You can have your year's worth of sugar intake.
It's what I just need, more sugar. Yeah.
Well, Ryan, thanks for joining us, and looking forward to seeing your picks compete with us against us the rest of the year, and looking forward with that breaking news to seeing you in Springfield, Ohio.
Just like
we keep meeting in all these like real real destinations: Springfield, Ohio, Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's great.
The high points of the Midwest is what
That's right. That's right.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Ryan. Appreciate that.
Oh, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And another segment making its return this year is the Upset Watch. Matt, the Upset Watch got off to a blistering start a year ago. So we'll see. We'll see what happens this year. But we have a team that's already on Upset Watch here, Matt. A couple teams that we've talked about here. So give it to us here.
Yeah, I'm putting Williams, number 7 Williams, on Upset Watch. November 11, they go to play at WPI. WPI is getting some poll points, so they are getting some top 25 attention. But a top 10 team in a game that they could potentially lose, or it could be very tight. That's the type of game I like to call it on Upset Watch. I know people quibble with me because a team like WPI may end up high in the Region 2 rankings, yada, yada, yada. Again, this is a top 10 team. It is on the road, but I think that this is a losable game if Williams is not on top of their game. They're going to play WPI. This is one we should all keep an eye on. First of all, it's a relevant national matchup. And second of all, it's a game where we could see a top contender, a top 10 type team go down. So Williams, the Eafs, I'm sorry, but you are on Upset Watch for week 1.
Now, Matt, you mentioned WPI is receiving votes, but they only received a total of 16 poll points, 8 of which came from your ballot.
Yeah.
So outside of you, there's really not a lot of top 25 buzz at all for WPI. So I'll just add that to the mix if anyone wants to quibble as to whether or not this qualifies as an upset there. But yeah, number 7 taking on an unranked opponent. I like it. This is one that I was kind of scanning the list, and I thought, I wonder if this is the one that's going to emerge as the Upset Watch pick, and here it is.
Yep. Love it.
All right, Matthew, moving on as we rapidly approach the end of our week 1 show here. Matt, we have the mailbag. Which will be mailbag making its return this year, but being week 1, we don't have anything to talk about. So mailbag, if we get anything, we'll talk about it. Anything that you want us to react to, you want our thoughts on, send it in as a mailbag. You can leave a comment on YouTube down below. You can send it in to us on any of our social media channels. Lots of ways to find us, lots of ways to get a hold of us. The mailbag doesn't happen without you.
And we do appreciate the audience participation at the top of this episode with the hot takes that were submitted. So thank you for that. But yeah, feel free any time of the week. We will put the tweet out toward the end of the week about mailbag questions. But anytime one strikes you, send it to us with the let us know you want to answer it on the mailbag, and we will try to talk about it on the episode.
And with the week 1 show out of the way, Matt, officially the games can begin. They have our approval to begin. We have completed the show.
Stamped it. Great job.
And as always, we want to give a special thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon, including, Matt, a special thank you to our latest Great Job Team supporters, Jordan George and Alex Yingling, our newest supporters since our last episode. And so thanks to them. Thanks to everyone else for their continued support. For more information about how you can support us through Patreon, go to patreon.com/D3Datacast. And we appreciate your consideration.
Enjoy the games, everyone. Good job, team.